there. So, we are ready to begin our study of World Literature 2. And we begin with the play Tartuffe, which was written by the French playwright Moliere. His real name is Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. Moliere is his stage name. So, Moliere spent his life in the theater. He began as a poor actor, and by the end of his life, he was managing one of the most prestigious theaters in France called La Comédie Française. Moliere wrote many plays, most of which are comedies. Now, we think of a comedy as something that makes us laugh. And that may be true for these older comedies as well. But what specifically makes this play a comedy is that it has a happy ending. Everything goes back to normal in the end after something happens that messes everything up. And it's that process of messing everything up that is so amusing and enjoyable to watch. So, Moliere follows a traditional structure in his play. It's made up of 5 acts where we're introduced to the characters in the beginning, and in the second act, a problem develops. That problem is developed further in the third act, and then there's usually some kind of climactic moment in the fourth act, either a revelation, like we have here in Tartuffe, or a kind of conflict where something finally comes to a head. And then in Act 5 of the 5 act play, it is all resolved. So we'll see Moliere follow this traditional structure in Tartuffe. Many of Moliere's plays are also satires. A satire can be a play or a fictional story that uses humor to point out flaws in society or flaws in other people. So we also see this in Tartuffe. Tartuffe, as the subtitle suggests, is an imposter. He is faking it. So, what is he faking? Tartuffe is pretending to be a very religious person. And I think Moliere's satire aims to point out that many people who may appear to be religious sometimes are not when they're behind closed doors. So, in this module, we're studying Acts 1, 2, and 3. Now, I have linked a translation of the play from the Gutenberg.org website, which is an excellent resource for free online literature. However, you do not have to read it to complete the work for this module. You can just watch the videos that I've posted of the performance of Tartuffe by the Royal Shakespeare Company. So, I'd like to take a minute and describe the language of this play. Now, Moliere originally wrote this play in French. And so, what we are watching and what we would be reading, if you look at the Project Gutenberg text, is a translation. Now, in the original French, this whole play was made up of rhyming couplets. That means that every 2 lines rhymed. If you look at the text translation from Gutenberg.org, that translation tries to maintain those rhyming couplets. Now, the version that I have in the video of the performance by the Royal Shakespeare Company does not use rhyming couplets. They use just a regular kind of spoken language. So I wanted to remind you that in the original French, these rhyming couplets really add to the effect of the play. It adds to the humor of the play. It makes it kind of lighthearted and kind of quickly paced, where there's very witty kind of back and forth comments between characters. And you see this also in our video presentation. I hope you'll find this performance also lighthearted and fun, which was Moliere's intention. Some important things to remember. the main characters. So, the father of the family, the man who invited Tartuffe to live in the house, is named Orgon. And when the play begins in Act 1, Scene 1, it is Orgon's mother, Madame Pernelle, who has a few choice words for the rest of the family because she thinks they are all living in a very immoral household. When Orgon finally arrives home, all he's worried about is Tartuffe. And this is ironic because Doreen, the maid, tells him that his wife has been very ill, but all he asks about is Tartuffe. And then in Act 2, we get some awful news, and this is when the problem really begins. He, Orgon, wants his daughter Marianne to marry Tartuffe. Marianne is supposed to marry Valere, but Orgon is breaking that promise to marry her to Tartuffe. Marianne is a meek, naive young woman. In our text translation, she's also called the ingénue, which is the French word for a naive young woman. So once this news that Marianne has to marry Tartuffe is discovered, the family begins to start to think of a plan of how can they show Orgon that Tartuffe is really a fraud. And then we finally meet Tartuffe in Act 3. What is your impression of him? I think this actor does a really good job being particularly creepy. So, in this module, we have discussion questions to answer. So make sure you completed the introduction discussion, tell us about yourself, and then move on to the questions for each act. I look forward to seeing what you think of the play.